huge.
Good evening, everybody. This is Patrick with Native Life,
Huge.
and you just heard the Turtle Song. It's by the Red Shadow Singers. We're going to be talking about wild rice tonight. There's probably one word in that song that you didn't understand, which was written in the lyrics, which is Anishinaabe. That means literally in the language of the Ojibwa, the Potawatomi, and the Odawa, uh, the people. But before I do that, those of you who are in the Native community know that we have lost 7 people to violence by the police, either through their inaction, their while in custody, or they've been shot. And I put together a song, and I kind of like to share that with you so I can get that off my heart, and we can go on with a good show.
Long for the days when the earth had 4 corners, the age when the water serpent carved out the streams, the lakes, the rivers. The waters ran swiftly, unabated, uninhibited, and the world had 4 corners.
Yeah, that's kind of a heavy thing to put on y'all this evening, but it's been a topic of conversation in my Facebook and Twitter line for the better part of the last 24 hours, and I felt like I should acknowledge that. So we'll be doing a show on police violence in Native American communities either in December or January. So I'll be pulling on that fairly hard, but again, I just wanted to get that dealt with so that you folks could understand that there's lots of stuff going on in the Native community besides just trying to get our wild rice back. Now, getting back on track, um, wild rice is something, and John, if you could pull up the slideshow number one. Wild rice is important in the Anishinaabe migration story. It we in between 1350 and 1400 there was a large meeting of the Anishinaabe people, and we were somewhere in on the coast around Nova Scotia, and we were given a prophecy, actually seven of them. And the third prophecy, the second prophecy was that the white people were coming. And how they knew that then, and if there had been contact with Vikings or any of the other things that archaeologists have said that maybe predated the um, the the landing at Plymouth Rock, I don't know. But the third prophecy stated that to survive, the people must leave the coast, travel inland to find the island that was shaped like a turtle, and to find the place where the wild rice grew on the water. Actually, it was, they said, food on the water because we had no experience with wild rice at that time. If you should be on slide two, John. So we're at slide two, and that's where we started out at. Now, this journey took about 150 years, and the stopping points, if you go to the next slide, number three, we have the turtle-shaped island, which was the first place that we stopped. And each place that we stopped for several decades. It wasn't like, oh, we just rested for a day or two and then went on. So each one of these represent a fairly large encampment, and of a lot of people, like 20, 30,000 people all moving together. And so we stayed at the Turtle Island, which is actually Walpole Island there in on the river. And then after about 40 or 50 years, we continued on, and we, after the long rest, we stopped at the Niagara Falls for a while, and then after that we journeyed into Michigan, which is at point number three, that second arrow that's horizontal rather than vertical. And there we got in a big fight with the Iroquois, and then we made peace, and there is a wampum belt that the Iroquois Confederacy still has, where our peace was enshrined. And then our big mass of people broke up into three tribes. And there's the Odawa, and they're considered the eldest brother, and they're the keepers of the trade. The second brother, the middle brother, is the Ojibwa, or they call themselves the Anishinaabe. And then there's the Potawatomi, which is my people, and they're the Anishinaabe, they're the younger brother. The Ojibwa are the keepers of the law. They keep track of the medicine and the law. And we were the keepers of the council fire. Basically, we threw the party. There's a little bit more involved in that, but that's pretty much the way that the three groups are related. We came from the same people, but we've now broken into three groups. And if you go to the next slide, number five, we get to just above the Great Lakes, and we split off and begin wandering around at stop 5. The one group goes north and one group goes south, and the wild rice is found at stop 6, and we reunite together at stop 7. Stop 7 is very near the reservation I grew up on, Hannahville, and it's where the tribes still to this day reunite once a year to commemorate the various things in our history, as well as to meet and put together changes in law and the way that we work together. So that's a little bit about the history of how rice is culturally important to the Anishinaabe people. Um, then that's all well and good. That was like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and we got there at about 1450, 1475, and first contact was around 1600 with the French traders. So we did ricing back then, and we still do ricing today, and it's very important. It is something that the families do together, that the bands do together, that the tribes do together. And John, if you could cue up America's Heartland, I've got a little clip that shows you just exactly how modern ricing is done today.
What I was told by some of the elders from my band is that, you know, part of being Anishinaabe is to live the way of life that our ancestors did. When the rice gets ripe, it goes from a green stage to the kernels actually kind of turning a light brown or a darker brown later on in the season. It's been a staple, you know, amongst the Ojibwe for probably as long as they've been around. You use the knocking sticks or flailing sticks to gently bring the rice over the canoe. The very ripe rice will just fall off as you touch each individual stalk.
Being on the lake, trying to be quiet when you're out there, not making a lot of noise, and the rhythm of picking the wild rice and the poling through the rice, and everything just moves in kind of a uniformity, and if you got a good picker and a good poler, it just works like clockwork. And then the parching and just standing there and stirring. The tribal members who still hand parch their rice, you get a little different flavor. You have a much lighter rice with a much better flavor, I believe.
Last year we did about 1,000 pounds. So that takes a few days. So. These are kind of work boots, but they got a real soft sole.
Minagushkam is the term, in the Ojibwe term for jigging the rice.
That grinds that hull off so that you're left with the rice. This is called a nuskachanagan. It's a basket used for winnowing rice.
And then you're left with this nice grain that you can use in a variety of foods throughout your whole year. We really like to eat it with maple sugar. In the spring we harvest maple sap and sugar, and then we put maple sugar on it and wild rice, and if you got some fresh berries, it's just really great. It's all tied to all of the elements of the earth, from water to the soil to the growing in the air. When you parch it with fire and use the wind to clean it, and so it's tied to all of the different elements that the tribe believes are part of a circle of everything that we do in our lives.
What I was told
So that's a little bit about how modern ricing is done. I grew up, we went ricing every year in the Upper Peninsula. The rice is used for all kinds of really good food. And I had to smile when the guy was talking about eating rice and all the different ways that you can have it because uh, you get any two Indians together and eventually they will be talking about food. So, John, if you could bring up that second slideshow. Manuman means spirit seeds. Manu is spirit, min is seed. And the Anishinaabe language is made up of stems and word stems, and you put them together to make complex thoughts. You can make a whole sentence out of a word. But Manuman means spirit seeds because we believe that that was something that was given to us by the Great Spirit and through prophecy. If you go to slide 2, we see food not only as sustenance but as medicine. That a traditional healer will not only, have you take certain herbs and things for what ails you, but will also tell you what foods that you should be eating that will make you healthy. And as you can see with slide 2 here, if you look at the various components of what white rice, which is what's mostly eaten in the United States, and brown rice if people are feeling particularly healthy, Manuman is much better than all those things. It contains more protein, zinc, and potassium than both brown and white rice varieties. And it also has a lot of B complex vitamins in it and is a very healthy a source of food. It keeps forever if you keep it dry. I know of folks that have like 5-year-old rice, and it's still good as long as it's dry. It's been parched and correctly hulled and stored. It will keep for a long time. Next slide. I love rice soup. The wild rice has a very nutty flavor, and it lends itself well to soup. It doesn't fall into mush. Soup is also thickened with rice flour. The rice is ground up and made into flour. So that's always really good. And number 4, you can have it as a salad, as he mentioned, with berries and nuts and things. It has a very distinctive flavor. It's not like white rice at all. It's not a gummy kind of tasteless thing. It's got a definite flavor to it. And number 5, of course, rice stuffing. Everybody has a rice stuffing, and it works for that too. And then finally, on number 6, which is a cake made out of rice flour. And because the rice is dark colored, and in part because of it's naturally dark colored, and also because it's been parched, which turns it a darker color. The anything that's made out of that rice is dark in color, but it's very it's got a very distinctive and strong flavor that works well with fruit and meat, and yeah, it's good stuff. Does anybody have any questions? I see one here. I just arrived. Who killed these people? That's a much longer discussion, and we actually lived in peace with folks until the Pontiac Wars, which were in the middle 1700s, and the things that led up to that and Tecumseh and all of that is definitely a longer, much longer topic. This show is making me hungry. Yeah, uh-huh. Me too. But food is one of those things that natives like to talk about all the time. When we have disputes and argue with one another, it is not long before the subject will turn to food and everybody is smiling again. So It's one of those things. Have you guys ever had pop rice? Because I've got
You keep
a
telling me.
video for pop rice, and that's probably my favorite way to have rice. I like it better than popcorn. It's real easy to do. You can do it with white rice or brown rice or wild rice. And John's trying to keep up with me here.
Trying.
That's okay, man. We're live. You know, folks know this is live broadcasting.
You want to
This
run
is
this?
the way TV used to be, yeah.
All right.
We're popping rice the muskrat way. What we're gonna do first here is check the oil. Looks like it's plenty hot. Put a couple kernels in there. Oh yeah. Look at them popping up. Oh yeah. Right done. So what we're gonna do, a small handful of rice. See that? Gently lower it in there. Agitate. Another thing I forgot to put down there. Agitate. Oh yeah. Look at that puff up. Oh, and it's done. Drain. Okay, looking good, looking good. Plop her in. Repeat. You can see I got my sugar ready. A handful. Careful on this hot oil. It's smoking hot, man. I mean, it's not smoking with it. You know what I mean. Lower it. Agitate. Oh, look at that. This is breakfast, people. Put blueberries on it. Anything. You eat it like cereal. Put milk and sugar, whatever fruit. See how well I drain it. Well, that's really it, people. It's really easy. You just need deep fry technology. Alright, have a good day.
So it was short and sweet and to the point. That's how you make pop rice.
Hey, Pat.
And you could go ahead.
I just want to say, when I said I'd never had popped rice, I had to think for a second. Of course I have. It's called Rice Krispies. It just doesn't look as good as that.
It's much better when it's fresh. It's kind of like the difference between having homemade bread and having store-bought bread.
There you go.
Having it hot and then being able to put your choice of toppings on it. You know, like maybe you want maple syrup, maybe you want some powdered sugar, maybe you want just cocoa powder, maybe you want to put some paprika on it or some chili powder. It's good whether it's spicy, you know, savory or sweet. And that's something that as a kid that was always a special treat when my grandma would make that. So I thought I'd share that. Now somebody had a question about when wild rice was harvested. Every band has for want of a better word in English, they have a rice chief. And that chief decides when the rice is ready, when it should be harvested, when the harvest is done, you know, when the canoes are coming back and they're not as full. It's in August or September, depending on, you know, how far north you are and how the season has been that year. So yeah, Marie is asking me, we don't have a lot of Manuman beds left in Michigan. Do you know restoration projects in other places? They've actually got a restoration project going on in the Upper Peninsula, and I have a clip of that later on in the broadcast. But yeah, restoration has been something that we've had to, and it's kind of sad because when I'm old. So, you know, 50 years ago when I was a kid, we would go ricing. A lot of us moved away and things happened and I'll get into what those things are. We the ricing beds began to disappear. And John, if you could go to A8, the treaty rights Fond du Lac Fond du Lac folder, Fond du Lac slideshow. I'll get it right yet. And just go ahead and slide that on over. I'm actually looking for a change. So, you know, as I've shown you, our stories, our culture, our treaty rights. Rice is the first meal that a baby gets when he starts eating solid food. To our old people is the last meal. So it's very important in, you know, our stories of how we got to be where we were, and our prophecies are, they're all tied up in menumen, in rice. And if you go for two right now, there's a big push to restore the wild rice beds, and I'm going to be talking primarily about Minnesota, but I do have a clip that talks. One of the people who've been working on this project in Minnesota actually went to Michigan to help found a restoration project there. So first of all, it's a long story, as all Indian stories tend to be. The Relocation and Termination Act took place in 1950, 1960, when the federal government decided they would try to entice Indians off of the reservation and into the cities so that they would have jobs. And they gave them relocation money. And if enough of them left, they terminated the tribe and took the money, or took the land. You know, it was a double-edged sword, but a lot of people moved into the cities. Well, why does this have to do with restoration? Well, a lot of us got education, and we went not only to, you know, through 8th grade, which is about all that the Indian schools were doing at the time, but we went on and went to high school, and then we went to college, and we became biologists and lawyers and all different kinds of people that were making money and actually had the skills to go up against the dominant culture. Then in the 1980s, there were some tribal resource rights court decisions that gave there was a large erosion between the middle 1800s and the middle 1900s of gathering rights. The predominant idea was you have your reservation, that's where you live. But part of our treaties were also treaty rights in hunting and gathering and fishing, and every tribe had their own things that they were interested in protecting, but those rights had been degraded, and the Supreme Court decided that. For instance, for the Fond du Lac people, that they had their treaty rights. That there was nothing in Title VI of the Constitution, it's enshrined that the U.S. will honor its treaties. And it made treaties with us, and we ceded our land for it so that other people could live on it, with the proviso that we could hunt and fish and gather in those areas still. Because our elders knew that a reservation was not big enough for us to be able to live, that we needed this other land, but we didn't need it all the time. Then in the 1980s and 1990s, we had environmental quality legislation that also gave us some backing on being able to say, hey, these are lands that we're supposed to be hunting and gathering and fishing on, and your agricultural runoff and mining tailings and all these other things that are causing, like the rice beds, to disappear, are interfering with our treaty rights, and we have some standing here. And of course, we also have Native American lawyers who are willing to push our case. And then finally, everything in the dominant culture takes money. And in the 1980s, the Indian Gaming Act was passed, and it's a compact between the state, in other words, whatever state a reservation is in, has to agree that they're going to allow to have a casino. You don't just automatically get a casino because you got a reservation. And so there was a lot of affluence. And while some tribes did per cap and just distributed all the money amongst the people according to, how many people were in the tribe, other tribes went, hey, we're going to keep some, part, all of this money, depending on the group, and we're going to use it in a communal way to better all of the people, not just give money to people and let them spend it on themselves. So if you could go to the next slide, John. This is the ceded land. If you'll notice, it's the northern half of Minnesota. Various treaties ceded with different groups, ceded land to the settlers to let them settle, but they reserved rights, hunting and gathering and fishing rights on that. And if you could go to the YouTube video that's on slide 4, you see a little bit about how wild rice restoration is actually happening. And this is again from Hannahville in northern Michigan.
The Earthkeeper Manoomin Project has planted over 1 ton of wild rice seeds.
Okay, go ahead. Let her rip. Good job. Oh, Danny, get a good handful.
The at-risk teens involved in the Manoomin Project arrive, in essence, doing community service.
No backswing, that's fine. One more.
After being sentenced in juvenile court for minor crimes.
In front of you, and go out. There you go. Beautiful. Good job.
However, many of the teenagers have so much fun planting and testing the wild rice, they ask to return the next year.
It's river rice. This is a really different kind of rice than we've seen from other years. This is river, I believe this is the very highly prized river rice. That's just my guess. But it's looking really good.
Over 100 at-risk teens have participated in the Manoomin Project, including these teenagers in 2007. After disappearing from northern Michigan a century ago, wild rice is being restored to 7 remote lakes through the hands of at-risk teenagers and American Indian guides. The project teaches the teens to respect themselves, nature, and American Indian heritage.
You're the first ones to bring it back to this area. So I'm just pleased that you're here. I'm pleased that I'm here. And
the 2007 planting was delayed due to low water levels in Wisconsin, where the seed is purchased and rushed back to the UP for immediate planting. 2007 was the 4th summer of the Manoomin Project. That includes a survey of the crop each July and planting in September.
Fire's prophecy. Each fire represented a different stopping point. We came from the East Coast and we went to the Great Lakes, and at one of the stopping points we were told that we would go to a place where there was food would grow on water, and that's what we call Manoomin, and that's the wild rice you're planting. So this is it was a gift from the Creator. It was food on the water. It's like somebody had said it was the only North American grain, wild rice, very nutritious.
The annual blessing of the wild rice is held each September in Marquette as a show of respect for the return of the once native grain and to thank the supporters of the Manoomin Project. Native Americans led the prayer of thanks for wild rice planting during the 2006 and 2007 blessing of the wild rice. The 2006 blessing was led by American Indian Don Chosa, and the 2007 blessing was led by Native American Dave Anthony, an NMU student from Lower Michigan. Over 100 people attended the blessing of the wild rice and enjoyed a wide variety of food. The wild rice is prepared in several ways at the blessing, including searing the grain into a crunchy treat mixed with dried fruit. Everyone has a fun time at these blessings of the wild rice. This special Native American platter was prepared as an offering at the 2006 blessing of the wild rice. It was created by American Indian guide Don Chosa. A member of the Keweenaw Bay Indian community, Don Chosa, and the teens bring the natural offering into the woods, where it was placed behind a log during the 2006 blessing. The organizers say these teenagers are truly a joy to work with and only need a little bit of positive attention to grow into the great leaders of tomorrow.
John Magnuson, who works with the Cedar Tree Institute, organized the Menomin Project. A lot of the kids that were there, at first they were angry, just to be there because it was something that they had to do. But as soon as we started and as soon as they started learning, they started to enjoy it. By the time they were done with 1 year of planting wild rice, they were willing to come back again, even on a volunteer basis, the following year.
In September 2007, Reverend Magnuson was one of the guests on Native American Calling, an American Indian radio talk show. Indian guide Don Chosa and Reverend Magnuson were both interviewed about the Menomin Project.
From his office in Net Lake on the Boys Fort Reservation in Minnesota is Don Chosa. He currently works as an administrator for the Boys Fort tribal government, and he has also worked with the Menomin Project in northern Michigan, which integrates the teaching of wild rice to work with at-risk youth.
I was teaching there at Northern Michigan University as a full-time adjunct professor. So I had the opportunity to act as a guide because I knew, the waterways there. And so we worked with adjudicated youth, or people that were offenders that had to perform community service. And because I had worked in a group home for 6 years, I had a lot of experience working with these type of youth. So we had a good time planting wild rice, and it was a lot of work. Besides the work, they got to learn about wild rice and learn about stories about wild rice that I taught them, and the importance of wild rice and the importance of it spiritually. They learn how to cook wild rice. They learn how to plant wild rice. They learn how to harvest wild rice. They learn how to take water samples and just to be outside. A lot of them hadn't been outside very much. So for them it was a good experience because, it was miles and miles of hiking and, mountain climbing and that type of thing.
Okay, well, I'm going to take another call right now. I want to bring in John, who's up in Marquette, Michigan. Hello there, John.
Hello, Harlan.
How's it going?
I'm doing fine. I've been involved with a special project and with a major Ojibwa community here, the Keweenaw Bay Indian community, in a project called the Menomin Project. It's part of the Cedar Tree Institute's work. We're a small nonprofit group that works around environmental projects and also with Native community. It was actually Don and I that made the proposal to Tribal Council, and that was 3 years ago, and he's been with us for 3 out of the 4 years. And, from my perspective, this is part of what a Roman Catholic theologian calls, at least in the non-Indian community, the Great Turning, which means that suddenly we realize the earth is our home. And some of these indicator species, like wild rice, Menomin, they're like a kind of a sacrament, you might say, in terms of the life and the survival of these species, these native species. There's a lot hanging on the success of these efforts. We've been in this 3 years. We planted about 2,100 pounds, and there was one of your callers earlier that talked about needing to get young people, not just Native people, involved. And this project is led by the Keweenaw Bay Indian community with the Cedar Tree Institute, and of course with Don and his family these past years. But these kids that we've been working with are all at-risk youth. And the things that I've liked about it, when I see these young people involving themselves in this healing work, this restoration work alongside Native kids, that keeps me going through my darkest times, because it's in the healing of the earth that people find their own healing. It's not disconnected, see? We bring back the rice, man. We're bringing back part of who we are as a human race. And Native people are leading the way here.
In this photo, Native American Indian guide Don Chosa points to wild rice while explaining the tradition to his son. In this photo, Chosa explains a prayer to at-risk teens. Chosa and his family are pictured here overlooking a bluff as the students survey the wild rice in 2006. In addition to the field work, the Manuman Project includes classroom time and other learning, like Tai Chi relaxation exercises and listening to stories from American Indian elders.
So that's how I got the name Tamamik Nadeshnikos, which is my name in the Tamamik. I also say Ojibwe Nada. I am Ojibwe Indian.
In July 2007, KBIC Elder Glenn Brissett of Harvey, Michigan, explained how he overcame some of the same obstacles that the at-risk teens are currently facing. Brissett described racism in Marquette when he was young, when his mother told all her children to lie about their American Indian heritage.
When I grew up in Marquette, there was only about 3 Indian families in Marquette back in the early 40s, 50s. And there was a lot of prejudice in Marquette. And I grew up with that prejudice. I was a dirty Indian. I was a stinking Indian. Just an old drunken Indian. I was just a dumb Indian. You know? And that's what I grew up in Marquette. A lot of prejudice. So I grew up with a lot of hate. Hating everybody who wasn't Native American. I hated it. And drinking helped me cope with that for the cause of the problem because of it.
The Manuman Project honors the teenagers and KBIC for working so hard to restore wild rice to northern Michigan. I'm Greg Peterson, and you're watching Earthkeeper TV.
The wild rice is still healing. It's healing the earth. It's healing the people. It is medicine. And there were some questions that folks had. Fond du Lac is in Minnesota, Celeste, and the program's been going on for 12 years now, and it is still continuing. As a matter of fact, they've expanded it in Fond du Lac. And John, if you could go to the 5th slide. We have a lot of rice. All those dots are rice fields, and there's other reasons to restore the rice in Minnesota besides the fact that it's good for the planet, it's good for the people, it seems to heal everything that it touches. The Enbridge wants to run a pipeline through the middle of Minnesota, carrying the corrosive Bakken oil to go to Wisconsin for refining. And the native people, particularly those at Fond du Lac, are fighting this. And one of the ways that they're fighting it is to use the wild rice. Now, if you go to slide 6, why is restoration needed? Well, there's been a lot of mining in Minnesota. There's taconite, which is an iron ore type. It's embedded in quartz and chalky-like material, a carbonate. And what they do is they remove the iron from that, and then the carbonate slurry they just have been dumping in the water for, years and years and years and years until the 1980s or so. And it degrades the environment such that the rice has been disappearing. Although if you talk to native people, they'll also tell you the rice has been disappearing because people aren't harvesting the rice anymore. When you harvest the rice in a traditional way, you're using the knocker. So you pull the rice over and use the other stick and you knock them together and it drops the grain into the bottom of the canoe. Well, the guy in the back's poling along and you're doing this. Not all of the rice goes in the boat. A lot of it goes on the water. And because there's people around, there's not critters that are coming by and eating up all the rice that is falling on the water. So a lot more of that rice ends up getting germinated. So it becomes this cyclical thing where as humans take care of as the rice takes care of the humans take care of the rice. So it's a combination of not having been gathering the rice, because so many people moved off the reservation because there was such obstruction, and it took having to go to the Supreme Court to get our hunting and gathering and fishing rights. So, you know, a legal background and a legal framework for that we could take to the states and say, oh, no, you don't. So those are all different reasons why the rice beds started to disappear. And if you go to slide 7, that shows you the little inset map in the right-hand corner, lower right-hand corner, shows where that is in Minnesota. And it's part of where Enbridge would be going through. And the green dots are where ricing is allowed. It doesn't mean that there's rice there. It means that the state has said that they can do ricing. The blue dots are where the state has said that natives cannot rice. And according to, of course, the Supreme Court, that whole entire area, if you remember back to our map on the ceded treaties areas, this whole area is ceded land, and we retain our hunting and fishing and gathering rights on it. And here in August, if you go to slide 8, several people were arrested, and if they knew they were going to be arrested. This wasn't like, oh God, we were just doing our thing and somebody came along and arrested us. No, they knew that they were fishing, they were gathering rice on a lake where the state of Minnesota had said no, even though they don't have the right to say no. And they ended up getting cited for it, and that particular battle is now ongoing. So that's where we're at with that. I don't know if anybody has any questions. Yeah, we are killing our planet.
We killed it. If everybody understands it, it's too late now, right? It's too late.
Well,
so
as I'm going to quote John Trudell here, we are foolish and we are arrogant if we think that we can destroy the earth. We can destroy our capacity to live on the earth, but the earth will heal. The earth will heal herself, but we will not continue. And that's where we're at right now, is that we need to start paying attention to these things. We need to quit letting the big corporations just, they're mining the seabeds now. They've got machines down there right now that are scraping the seabeds dry, raw, and just like mindless sci-fi machines that are down there just going through all the sand and everything that's down there to extract the metals and the minerals. And they're using all kinds of chemicals to do that with and pouring it back into the ocean. There's something that you will not hear about on the news, but it's going on right now. How many older pipelines? There are a lot of older pipelines. I don't have a map of all of them, but there are a lot of them. There are several, and I ran across this when I was doing my research, that were laid in the 1940s, and they actually go across reservation land. It's not that they're on treaty land. They're on reservation land. They laid them in the wrong place. And there's a blockade of folk. They ended up putting up a fence because according to the rules, they can't have pipelines running in under anywhere where there's a permanent structure, and a fence is considered a structure. So the Indians have been building fences all over, just pieces of a fence, not even enclosing anything, just building fences across where the pipelines are running so they can take it to court and get those pipelines out of there. There's pipelines that are running underneath the Great Lakes that the oil companies want to run Alberta tar sand or oil sands, depending on whether you're talking to an environmentalist or a corporatist, but they want to run that through the Great Lakes. And the pipes are in places the sand is washed out from under them. They're completely unsupported. They're degrading. They've been down there since the 1950s, so that's 65 years now. And they want to do all of this and run it through those pipelines. And there's a whole big movement against the oil under the Great Lakes as well that I'm pretty well tuned into. Are all what in use? I'm sorry. Are they all in use, or some of them abandoned? Oh, are all the pipelines in use? As far as I know, yes, they're still running oil or gas or whatever through those pipelines. And that when the big thing is now, see, is they want to dig up those pipelines and replace them with other pipelines, which would be fine, except they're running right straight across reservation land. They didn't get any permission, any kind of easement, any kind of anything when they put those in, which was in 1942 when we were during World War II. So, they just did what they wanted to back in at that time. So that's what's going on with the pipelines in Minnesota. Yeah, pipelines in Minnesota is like a whole nother hour of program, because there's just so much stuff out there, and and that's just a whole nother program, hour-long program on Native Americans and the pipelines. I just not even covering the Minnesota folk and the pipelines, or the Wisconsin folk and the pipelines. So yeah, it's a rather loud and touchy subject up there right now. So does anybody have any more questions? Because I know we're like way later than we said we were going to be.
That's all right. We're rolling with it.
Okay,
good show,
cool.
Pat.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm interested in this stuff, but I always it always kind of tickles me that other people find this all fascinating too.
As an ignorant white American, I have to say it's all new information. So,
does this bring up issues of adverse possession regarding native lands? See, the problem with adverse possession is that you cannot apply it to treaty. A treaty is a treaty according to Article 6 of the Constitution. And so those, it'd be the same thing as if we made a treaty with, I don't know, Spain or Canada. And we said, okay, you can have this piece of land here for your people to live on, and you'll have to answer to the federal government as far as your conduct on that land. But other than that, it's your land. Except instead it was to the natives. So that adverse possession argument, according to the Native American lawyers, is not something that's going to fly. We shall have to see. Does anybody have any other questions? Because otherwise I'm going to kind of take it and wrap it up here.
You're doing awesome, man.
Okay. Somebody's going to paste something there. I got a comment sheet I'm looking at, so as soon as the comments come through, then I can respond to them.
I got a question, Pat.
Sure.
What can we do? What can the 99 do?
What can the 99 do? Winona LaDuke is one of the activists at Fond du Lac, and getting involved with one of her groups would be something that would help. They have a number of events, nothing planned for the rest of this year because, of course, it gets cold and there's lots of snow up there. But come spring and summer, there will be more events going on, and I will gladly let folks know about those. In the meantime, the Sandpiper pipeline, according to the Minnesota government, has its blessing to go ahead and run across the treaty lands. So, supporting that effort, just Google Sandpiper pipeline, And you'll find a number of environmental groups, a number of Native American groups, and I'm sure they would welcome your support, your help in email campaigns and Twitter campaigns and phone call campaigns and so on during the winter months. And then finally, we're not going to forget Oak Flat. We are going to keep bringing this up. Oak Flat, the Save Oak Flat bill is stalled in committee right now. It's been there since July. It's got 35 senators that are co-sponsors of this bill now. There are 13 members of the Save Oak Flat, the committee that Save Oak Flat bill is stuck in. And there's a web page on native-life.net, which has all of their Facebook pages conveniently displayed in a grid. Call them, and also their phone numbers. Call them, Facebook them, tell them, they need to pass that out of committee and onto the House floor so that we can go along with the bill process and try to get this taken care of. The anniversary of John McCain's treachery is December 3rd, and it would be a nice natives like circles, and it would be a very nice circle to end up on December the 3rd having this go to the floor of the House and the Senate and have it pass and be on the president's desk. So any time that you have to support this, that would be so awesomely appreciated. Do we have any upcoming Bernie events, John?
I actually don't think we do. Janine? I don't actually think we have.
Sorry, Pat. I was typing to you in the Slack there.
Yeah.
We're actually looking for some reporters for Friday. If anyone's going to be in Derry, New Hampshire, and that will be attending the town hall event there, if they could email us at info@bernie2016.tv and let us know if you can either send us your Periscope or if you want to join us in a hangout and stream it to us from there, that'd be great.
Okay, and then finally, upcoming Native Life events. On November the 4th, which is next week on Wednesday at 9 o'clock, unless Bernie interrupts me again, which I don't mind. But on November the 4th, we've got a very special presentation. The Black Hills are not for sale, and it's a very powerful and moving presentation on the struggles of the Ogallala to get the Black Hills back. They were stolen during the gold mine rush in the Black Hills. Then on November 5th and 6th, we have a special event. We're going to Seattle. A gentleman, some of you know him by the name of Rich Green, will be on site at Evergreen College. And they're at the Longhouse there. They will be having Indigenous Climate Justice Symposium, and we will be there for the opening speech and introductory ceremonies from 7 until 9:30 Pacific. And then again on Friday morning, the 6th, we will be there for the panel, the discussion panel, which will be from 10 in the morning until noon 30 Pacific time. And I think that's about all I have to say. If there's anybody else, we're ready to go.
I'm just looking at some of the comments here, Pat.
Okay.
And I was just going to say one last thing is, Pat, I love these shows. The first part of it made me very sad. The second part made me hungry. And the third part made me very mad. And I have to tell you, too, sorry, because I was trying to post and none of my posts were going through for 10 minutes. So that's why. But I did want to thank you for all the great content tonight. So thanks.
Okay, and this last song is by Wigwam. They're a Ojibwa Cree group, and it's a traditional parting song. It was a song that was sung while people were paddling their canoes, and the footage that's running behind it is this awesome silent film that I found that's in the Canadian Museum. There's a link to it on native-life.net under tonight's broadcast, and check it out if you get a chance, because it was shot in 1935. It's a silent movie, and it's got all kinds of interesting stuff in it. So if you could roll that beautiful bean footage, we'll be out of here, John.
Huge